Well, there's this thing called the internet, and that's come around over the last 20, 25 years. And now people have access to data and information. They probably know more about home values than most agents do. So the way that I ask that question is like, Jose, you strike me to be someone who's pretty savvy. So I'm sure you've been online, looked at some of these sites that give estimates of value. So I'm wondering, did you have an idea of realistically what you were thinking in terms of price? And it's like, yeah, and I'm sure you've been to some of these sites. Notice I'm not mentioning names, because those guys are trying to eat our lunch, so I'm not going to give them free promotion. They give estimates of value. So did you have an idea at all of realistically? Now, the reason why I use that specific word is that everything about after the word realistically has to be realistic. And they're going to tell you something. It's either going to be a variation of a few things. One is going to be like, yeah, we were thinking this. Or one is, well, I kind of want to hear what you have to say first, right? So it's kind of a variation of a few things, but that's really the only responses that you're going to get. I want to hear what you have to say, like that sort of thing. So let's say they say to you, well, yeah, we were thinking this. Okay, great. And I appreciate your willingness to share that. My intention in asking is really just to gauge your expectation. My goal and objective, provided the opportunity, is to help you maximize value and get you every penny possible. I'm also the mindset, Jose, I'd much rather earn your business with integrity, being honest and straightforward about what's reasonable and realistic versus promising you something I know is not going to happen and not be able to deliver. So in preparation for us connecting, myself and team and staff are going to be doing a lot of homework, and we're going to send you an email to your email address. And in that email, amongst other things, will be an updated market analysis that I'll bring with me during our time together. And what we'll look at is what's active on the market right now and not selling with pictures so we can compare apples to apples. Then we'll look at what has sold and closed most recently, because of course, as you know, what something's worth is what somebody's willing to pay and what they had to offer and how much they got. And from all of that information, we're going to determine together as a team, not a pinpoint to the penny in terms of price, but instead a very tight, realistic range as to what would be reasonable. Does that approach make sense to you? And they're going to be like, yeah, makes perfect sense. And also what I'm doing there and how I'm structuring that, I'm including them in the decision-making. I think the training and what people would receive previously was like, I know and you don't. But that exists for a world in which consumers don't have access to data, where I can go in and be like, I know and you don't. And that's not the world that we live in now. So instead, this approach is very much so coming from a place of inclusion. It's like, look, this is your property. I know you have access to data. I know you're checking these sites every day. So what we're going to do together as a team is we're going to look at this data. And as specialized knowledge becomes, like as information becomes free, specialized knowledge becomes more valuable. So I'm here just to help you to interpret and to consult. And ultimately, you're the boss. You'll decide how we wish to proceed. And whatever you decide, I'll support you.
Agreed. And then when you're digging for the price, just know that they don't have to give you like an exact number as to what they want to list it at. You just have to have some sort of indication as to where they want to be. Meaning, like if they say, well, look, my neighbor's house sold at 700,000. I think mine's better. So I'm thinking higher than 700,000. Boom. You've got some indication as well, too. And then also sometimes what they'll say is, and you kind of covered this already, they'll say, well, we want to hear what you have to say about price as well too, and what most agents typically do is they'll say, well, like as a professional real estate agent, I study homes and prices every day. Therefore, I assume that you'll list with me at a price that'll cause it to sell. So what price won't you go below? And the problem is that as soon as you say like, what price won't you go below? Like imagine being on the receiving end of that. Imagine you are the person that they're like, what price won't you go below? And it's like, well, I thought you were my fiduciary. I thought you were my real estate agent. I thought you're trying to help me get top dollar for my property. Why do you want to know what price I won't go below? And it creates like this like mixed messaging where like you're telling them that you're going to help them and you're telling them that you're going to help them get top dollar. And then your messaging over here is like, well, what price won't you go below? Like,
yeah. And I led with a question of, you're going to listen to me when I see you, and what price won't you go below? It's very clear what the intentions are behind that, which is like, this is about me, and I'm interested in like, what's the lowest amount that you're willing to sell the property for, instead of coming from a place of contribution, which is like, look, we're going to look at this together as a team, and I'm going to give you some options that you have at your disposal, and whatever you decide, I'll support you 100%. I want you to know that our interests are in alignment. Obviously, we get compensated more the more we help you sell it for. At the same time, again, I'm committed to earning your business with integrity. versus promising you the moon and not being able to deliver. Does that sound fair? And they're like, yeah, that sounds super fair. And now we're like in alignment, right? It's kind of like if I came up to you and you were, I don't know, selling your car or something. I'm like, the first thing I said to you was like, hey, what price won't you go below? It's like, screw you, buddy. Like, what do you mean? What price won't I go below? Now it's very clear to me, like you're trying to like take from me instead of trying to contribute and add value to me.
Yeah. And then there's also more basic ways of asking for price. Like a very basic way is like, or Aaron, when I see you, how much did you want to list your home for? It's very simple. It's like, and this is the room. This is another room. Now in the room, we're focusing about price, and that's all we're talking about. And sometimes whenever they say, well, look, Jose, we actually would like to keep that information confidential. We want to hear what you have to say first. We're going to take what you tell us and we're going to compare it to 2 or 3 other agents. Most agents will be like, okay, there are ways to handle that. And you described one. I'm going to share the way I handle it. I'll be like, well, look, Aaron, the reason I'm asking you about the price is more or less to gauge expectation. I want to make sure that you and I are on the same page. Let me give you an example. I had a seller last week tell me that they wanted me to tell them the price. We talk a little bit further. They tell me that they want $3 million for the property. I know realistically the property would only move for $1 million. I could tell you that over the phone, or I could tell them that over the phone. So in that case, it wouldn't make sense for me for us to meet. So I'm not asking what price do you want to tell you exactly what you want to hear and almost regurgitate that price right back to you. The reason I'm asking is just to make sure that our expectations are somewhere in line. So what were you thinking? And they're like, well, I was thinking somewhere around 700 to 750. Boom. That's all I need to know. I'm still, as the agent, I'm still going to do my own independent research. I'm still going to do my own market analysis. I'm still going to have my own opinion about the price as well, too. But at least I know what they're thinking now. And I want to make sure that they're somewhat in line. And like what happens? Like, okay, so what if they want $1 million and their property is only worth 750? Like,
we need to have a conversation before I come and see you. Like I would do a second pre-qualify and be like, hey, I'm, really doing my best to support, your expectation and what you want. At the same time, I'm not seeing data to, show me that that's an accurate assessment of things. So what I'd like to do is go over some of the recent sales in hopes that can help you to decide what you feel is best. Because again, as I mentioned to you in preparation for connecting, my job's to help you. It's never to talk you into doing anything. So and then you go over that information. Did you know that? And then say they're like, well, damn it, and I won't. And then what I would say is, so let's say you knew that through no fault of your own or mine, which is a key phrase, right? The marketplace is showing us that buyers and sellers have been agreeing for $750 for your home. And those recent sales were in the last 30, 60, 90 days. If you knew that that's what it would be required, around that price point is what it would take to actually get the home sold, do you think you would still proceed with selling, or would you try to figure out a different option, maybe renting it or staying put or something of that nature? And then they're going to tell me that. And I'd rather them tell me that before I get in a car and go drive them and talk to them for an hour about, the situation.
And this is one of those things that, like, this might be one of the rooms that I walk back into, Aaron. I know that we don't move into another room until we're done with that conversation. And the reason I would say this is, like, let's say that you look at the comps, or the area really well, and that everything is selling around 700, but let's say they want 799. But let's say that you walk into the other room, and the other rooms, they say, you ask them, would you describe your home for me? Meaning, like, what is the condition of the property? And let's say that they tell you, I've got a guest house in the back that brings in $3,000 of rental income. Is there a possibility now, if everything's selling at 700, that they could get that 800,000? So, like, whenever they tell me the price there, like, regardless of what the price is, I don't question it until I know what the condition of the property is. So, for example, like, there's still going to be a couple of other rooms that we're going to walk into. And then when I go into the condition of the property, I'm looking for, like, hey, look, like, can we, because I remember, like, talking to a seller and the guy goes, yeah, I want like 800,000. I'm thinking, like, dude, no way you're going to get 800,000. And then that's what I'm thinking in my head. And then he tells me, I've got a guest house. I know that guest houses are extremely rare in that community. And he starts telling me that his house is fully decked out and that the guest house brings in $2,000. Now I'm like, huh, there's a chance you might be able to get that 800,000, even though it's $100,000 more than anything that is sold in the community, because you do have that extra dwelling at the property. So
Yeah,
that might, in my situation, I might want to walk back into that room. Now, if once they describe the home to me and there's not enough, like it's not there, then we can have that conversation as well too, as to, hey, look, I'm not finding any data that supports that price.
agreed. And I think there's two rooms that we could potentially go back into. One is what you described as far as what the property has to offer. The second is his motivation. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
less like concerned about, what they're telling me price wise, as long as the motivation's strong, because motivation always fixes price. So if they were to say to me, I want 790, and I asked them in the motivation room, is it an option for you to not sell the home and still move? And they're like, no. Is it an option for you to rent the home and still move? And they're like, no. And if you don't mind me asking, was there any particular reason you were even considering selling? I have a new job and they want me out there in the next 90 days. Okay. Like that person's moving. So even though they're saying to me like this, it's not an option for them not to sell, and it's not an option for them to rent it and still move. So, we're still going to have a conversation with them for sure. So there's two rooms that you can revisit. One is what the property has to offer, and two is motivation.
And the key there, bro, is that motivation fixes price. A lot of people they want 800,000, the home's only worth 700,000. But if their motivation is strong enough, they're gonna sell regardless, and it's either gonna be with you or somebody else. And motivation is really the key to taking a lot of listings. You want to get in front of people that are motivated to do something, not people like, yeah, if it happens, great. If it doesn't, then that's okay too,
Exactly. Yeah. So good. So then we have this conversation. If they push back at you, like we said, we asked them about price, like how did you, I'm sure you've been to some of these sites to give estimates of value. So did you have an idea at all of realistically what you were thinking in terms of price? And they'll tell you, and then you'll say like, okay, great. And then in terms of the property, have you done any changes or modifications to the inside that you believe would affect its value? Examples being like kitchen, bathrooms, or flooring. Because to Jose's point, what he just said, I need to know this information as myself or staff are doing a CMA, because that's going to allow us to get a realistic range. Again, not a pinpoint to the penny, but a tight range as to what's going to be reasonable or realistic based on terms and conditions. I mean, based on, features and amenities that the home has to offer. And then what I do is like, as we're talking about this, I'll kind of guide them. So in Florida, there's certain things they'll be like, yeah, this and this, like, okay. And how about in the kitchen, like countertops, cabinets, appliances, any changes or modifications there? And they'll be like, oh yeah, yeah. Like, okay, now how about flooring? Is it tile or wood or carpet? How about the bathrooms? Any like vanities, commodes, showers, any changes there? And I'll pull it up on Google Map and I'll be like, yeah, I'm very familiar with your community. I'm pretty sure like your property backs up to a body of water. And they're like, whoa, how'd you know that? It's like, I'm a magician. There's this thing called the internet, right? So, and then like major like heating and cooling systems, the bones, like a AC, water heater, roof, any issues there. And in Florida, hurricane impact windows is a thing. So I'll be like, hey, do you have hurricane impact windows? No. Okay. And then the follow-up question to that is, do you plan on making any additional changes or modifications before I start to bring buyers through? And that's where we're like assumptively closing. Now we're not just gathering information, but we're starting to move the process forward.
The other thing, like the way I look at what you describe your home to me is I like to think about it like I want to ask enough questions until I'm able to visualize what their home kind of looks like from the inside, or what their home kind of looks like in my head. So I'll ask questions like, so for example, like I'll say like, okay, would you please describe your property for me? And then just like you, I'll guide them through different rooms. I'll say, have you done any upgrades? And they'll say something like, well, yeah, my house is fully remodeled. Okay, great. When you say fully remodeled, do you mean that you've upgraded the kitchen? Yes, that means I've upgraded the kitchen. Okay, great. When you say you've upgraded the kitchen, does that mean that you redid the cabinetry, or does that mean that you repainted the kitchen cabinets and just resurfaced them? Because that makes a difference in our area. If they spent $100,000 or $50,000 on brand new cabinetry versus if they just sanded the existing cabinets down, painted them, and put new doorknobs, that's a different style of upgrade. Okay, great. You mind me asking what kind of countertops you have? You mind me asking what type of flooring you have throughout the house? Sometimes they'll say like, okay, I've got this nice laminate flooring. Okay, you mind me asking what color is the laminate flooring? Because I want to see how modern or how outdated the property is going to feel. Because just because somebody has remodeled that property, that doesn't mean it's remodeled to today's standard. Meaning like I could have remodeled my property 10 years ago. What if I remodeled my property back in the 1960s, bro? In the 1960s, that was hip. Today, I don't think that's as hip, today, although some of the things are coming back now, like wallpaper and some of those things, but still. So whenever I am asking them, I may even ask them, okay, you mind me asking when these upgrades were done? Oh, they were done 15 years ago. Okay. If I start to see like colors like in my area, like browns or like tans, that's not what's in right now. So it may still sell for a really good price, but it may not sell like if they had the white kitchen, if they had the light gray walls, if they had the light gray floorings, that might sell at more of a premium because that is more in line with the styles that are happening right now. So I like to ask questions that are going to allow me to visualize what level of remodel they did, when they did the remodel, and almost like be able to visualize what it looks like from the inside. That way, when I'm doing my market analysis, once again, how to prepare for the listing appointment. Once I'm doing my market analysis, I'm looking for the comps that best reflect what they've just described to me. So now if they're telling me like, hey, look, I've got the property fully remodeled, they got this, this, and this, I'm trying to find the best comparables that match that. That way, when I'm presenting comparables, they're like, oh yeah, that house is actually really similar to mine. Oh, that sold at 700. Oh man, I guess my price of 800,000 may not be in line with where the marketplace is. And you're able to collect this information about the description by asking these questions. So how to prepare for a listing appointment really comes down to how well are you at pre-qualifying the seller or asking these questions? Because this is going to tell you how to prepare for the appointment.
Yeah, 100%. And then that follow-up question, like, so as we're digging and they say like, yeah, I remodeled, and you're like, great. So approximately time frame wise, how long ago did you remodel the kitchen? So I can be clear, like when it was it 10 years ago? Was it a year ago? Right. And that'll give you an indication as to if it's modern or, perhaps a little dated. And then if it sounds as though, based on what you shared with me, you don't plan on making any additional changes or modifications before I would start to bring buyers through. Is that correct? And that's where we're starting to assumptively close and kind of move the process forward. And they're like, no, I don't think so. Okay, great. And then I'm going to be preparing for you a net sheet, Jose, so that way we can determine for you dollars and cents what the proceeds will be when it all shakes out. In order to do that properly and professionally, just need a roundabout. Is there anything still owed on it, like any liens or encumbrances or mortgages, or is the property free and clear for you and your family? And then be quiet.
What I used to do, because there was a script out there that taught me that says like, well, Aaron, how much do you owe on the property? I would get so much pushback. So the way that Aaron phrased it is key right there. Like, you got to realize that the way that you phrase things is either going to get people defensive or they're going to be like, okay, that makes sense. And they're going to want to give you that information. So I used to ask him, how much do you owe on the property? And they would get very defensive with that. People would say like, well, why do you want to know? Why does that matter? Oh, I want, and then I would catch myself like almost having to explain things. Well, I want to prepare a net sheet. Oh, don't worry about the net sheet. I'll prepare the net sheet myself, or just make the net sheet based on what, that I owe zero, and then I'll do my own numbers on it. But by you asking that, sometimes that leads to a little bit of distrust. So by letting them know why you want to know how much they owe, it almost opens the door. I ask it in a very similar way where I say, well, Aaron, I want to prepare what's called the seller net sheet for you. This is going to let you know net bottom line, what you can expect to receive at closing after escrow, title, and any commissions. Is there still a balance still owed on this property, or is the property paid off free and clear? And typically what I get, they'll say, no, there's still a balance. It's about 400,000. Or they'll say, no, there's still a balance. Okay. You mind me asking roughly what that balance is? It's right about 350,000. Boom. So you got to remember, guys, that like whenever you're looking at a script, it's more about like a room and having different ways of asking the questions in a way where it doesn't get people defensive, but it still gives you the information that you want. So by us asking it that way, we're still getting the loan balance. We're just asking it in a way where it doesn't get people defensive, instead of, Aaron, how much do you owe on the property? Why do you want to know? Why do you want to know how much I owe on the property?
How much do you owe? What price won't you go below? Are you going to list with me when I see you? It's like, it's very clear, like what the intention is, right? Versus what we're doing here is I'm sharing with you not only why, but that it's in your best interest. So I'm going to be preparing a net sheet for you and your family. So that way you guys could see dollars and cents, what the proceeds would be that you can take with you to Oxnard, that you can take with you to Florida, that you could take with you to Texas. In order to do that properly and professionally, just need a roundabout. Is there anything still owed on it, like liens, encumbrances, or mortgages, or is it free and clear? And to your point, once you change the approach, when you create an environment that's conducive for a yes, and that's conducive for, somebody kind of engaging and perhaps sharing that information with you, then like 95% of the time they will. Versus the other one, which was like, large portion of the time they get defensive and they push back. But I need to know this information. And the reason I need to know this information is so that way I can help them, and for me to determine too, as we're doing this homework, just to ensure that there's an equity position, right? If they tell me that they need 100%, I need 100 grand, otherwise I can't move. And I know how much they owe on the property when we're doing the homework. If the homework doesn't support that, now it's time to do a second pre-qual, call them, tell them what I'm seeing, and have a conversation before we connect.
Now, a lot of people think that you win listings at the listing presentation. You can actually win the listings in the pre-qualification script, meaning that, like, depending on how they feel about the way that you're asking the questions, that is either going to give them a negative impression of them or a positive impression of them. I went on a listing presentation against one of my buddies, and obviously I took it,
This guy, obviously, let's go.
Like a champ, But what they told me is that he asked very similar questions to what I asked. What they told me is that they felt like he was asking too many questions, or that it was too abrasive. And the reason is not that he was asking too many questions. It was the way that he was asking the questions was more about him versus them. So what I tell people is you can win or lose a listing presentation on the prequel, because they're either going to end that conversation with, man, that was a really pleasant conversation, or man, that guy asked me a lot of questions and it felt like an interview.
Felt like an interrogation.
Right? Now this is a presentation as well too. The prequel is a presentation, and because it is a presentation, it should be something that you're practicing, meaning something that you're practicing on how to deliver this in a way where it makes the consumer feel good. You collect the information that you want, and also it allows you to be fully prepared for the listing appointment.
100%, man. And what I'm aware of is I think a lot of agents imagine that the listing presentation is only when I physically go to their home. Nah, this is the beginning of the listing presentation. And to your point, if you do this right and you nail it, right, you nail the presentation, and then you send, which we will probably do another video on and talk about, like the pre-listing information that gets sent out before I go see them, and some additional steps that we take. 80% of the decision's made before I even step foot in their home, right? I want to equip them with all the information that they need to make a decision before I even connect with them. And the reason why we're doing this is because we live in a world in which technology has changed our expectation, has changed our behavior on how we make decisions, right? And you're used to now in this day and age doing a lot of your own homework and coming to pretty much a conclusion before you speak to anybody, right? And I want to create the same environment for them. And then when I speak to them, then I show up dressed fresh like $1 million. And then what comes out of my mouth is, different than what other people are seeing. We're coming from a place of contribution. We're also ninja salespeople. Then, we convert at high levels. So we only have a couple more questions on this prequel that I want to get to because I know everybody's time is valuable here. So once they say, like, yeah, here's how much we owe, great. And I'm imagining, based on what you shared with me, that you're not interested in acting like a bank and holding a note for a new buyer. You just want for me to help you to get all the cash out. Is that right? And they're going to be like, well, yeah, I mean, that's what I want, right? But that's just a way to assumptively close there, right? Do you want me to help you to get all the cash out? And they're usually going to be like, yeah, because very few people want to, hold a note. And then you say, okay, great. And then, my intention, provided the opportunity again, is to do a wonderful job for you and your family. So other than what we've discussed so far, somebody's got a great track record, somebody who can help you get top dollar, somebody who can help, refer you to someone, a vendor who can put stuff in a pod and ship it out to California. somebody who would look out for your best interests, make sure all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted, and somebody who could just execute and get it done for you. Is there anything else, Jose, you'd be looking from me as your agent that would be important to you? So that's another assumptive close, like as your agent. That would be important to you. And they're going to tell you, well, yeah, like how much is the commission? Or yeah, like we want to talk about this. Or yeah, we want somebody at this, this, and this. Okay, good. Well, I made a note of those things here, and we'll be sure to discuss them during our time together. Now, I'm aware that I'm just a voice over the phone at the moment, Jose. So in some information that I'm going to send you in preparation for connecting, in the signature of my email, there'll be a link to our website. Check that out. Put a face to the name. There's also a link. There's these buttons you can click on where you can see all of our personal reviews online. We have over 530 five-star reviews from clients just like you that we've helped in your area from start to finish get the most. So I encourage you to take a look at a few of those, not all of them, but a few. So that way you can get a feel and a flavor for the service and results we provide. Okay. And they're going to be like, yeah. Now, why are we doing that? Because we're reverse engineering how we have been trained through technology to make decisions, right? So let's say you and your wife were going to go out to dinner tonight. You don't know where to go. You're not going to pick up the phone and call somebody and be like, hey, man, what was the best restaurant you've been to? Like, no, you're going to go to your phone and then you're going to look at reviews and then you're going to watch a video and maybe look at pictures of the food. And then you're going to make a decision on who gets the check for $100, just like that. So what we're doing is we're reverse engineering that. We're pushing them to these digital assets that can help do the selling for us instead of us being like me, I, and I'm the best and I'm so great. Just let the tech do it for you. Let the digital assets, let the reviews, let your past clients who have left glowing reviews sell you to the consumer instead of you kind of verbally vomiting, telling people how great you are. And then I'll say, okay, and I've asked you a bunch of questions. Do you have any other questions or concerns for me? Quiet. And then they'll tell you, like, okay, good. And then it leads us back to that final question, which is, all right, and then you strike me, Jose, to be someone who's super straightforward. I'm the exact same way. I can tell in speaking to you, you've really thought this through. And, it's not a question of if you're going to do this, it's just a question of when and who you're going to partner with. So when we do connect, provided that it makes sense, of course, numbers work. You feel comfortable and confident with me and my team that we can help. You do that due diligence. You check me out online. You see track record or see reviews. It seems as though you would be open to the possibility of hiring me to help when I see you tomorrow at 6. Is that right? And they're either going to say yes, no, or maybe. Oftentimes they'll be like, well, yeah, that's why I'm inviting you out. Okay, great. Right? If they say, well, we want to hear what you have to say, then cool. We can handle that. But let's say they say, yeah, I mean, we're open to it. Awesome. So what I'll do, Jose, is I'll bring with me the analysis that we'll send over via email. So that way we can look at that together as a team and figure out strategically how to position the property to make sure we get you guys top dollar. And then I'll also have with me the appropriate documentation, the listing paperwork. So provided that it all makes sense and you and your wife feel comfortable and confident, we can take care of that and get the process started. Fair enough? And they're like, yeah, that's fair, which is another close. It's like, look, I'm setting the expectation. Like when we meet, the expectation is that we're going to do business.
It's funny too. And now, whenever they do say yes, that doesn't mean that you've won the listing presentation, guys, because you still have to present in a good way. And we'll probably do a live listing presentation video for you guys. What I wanted to invite you guys is comment below. This video is not over because we're still going to talk about a couple things, but comment below what type of videos you guys would like to see. But the point I wanted to make that is because when I would get done pre-qualifying people, some people would say, yes, I'm going to list my home with you. And I would go over and ruin the presentation because I was presenting in a way where it wasn't conducive to taking a lot of listings. And it was like, no. And then I've been in situations where like, no, I'm not going to list my home with you. Just come over. I'll interview you. If I like you, we'll take it from there. And they do list the property with me. So don't get so caught up on that. No, they said no, or yes, they said yes. Because I've seen agents that are like, dude, they said yes, they're going to list their home with me. And then I ask them when they come back, they're like, no, I didn't take it. And I'm like, well, what happened? It just means that you might have said something at the presentation that maybe they didn't like, or maybe something wasn't handled the right way. So you can still ruin the presentation. At that point, you're just trying to increase the chances. The other thing is that whenever I say like Jose, look, I'm going to prepare what's called the marketing package of information. In this marketing package of information, I'm going to include the most recent comps. I'm going to include a copy of the plan of action, and I'm also going to include a link to our reviews. When I send it, will you take a few moments to review it? Yes. I actually give them a deadline of when that package is going to come. One, to keep me accountable. And two, to be able to deliver on one of my first promises to them, meaning I'll say you will receive that package by tomorrow at 5 p.m. Because one, I've seen where a lot of agents deliver this package or get this package to them, but they get it like 10 minutes before the presentation. That does not give the seller enough time to review it. So I like committing to a deadline because one, it makes sure that that I give it to them and they have enough time to review it. And two, it gives me it puts a little bit of pressure on me to get everything done as well too.
That's exactly right. And then what came up for me is if somebody's like, well, we're not sure yet. Okay. And I know it's a big decision. You want to make sure you're making the best decision possible. I mean this very humbly. I really do. 95% of the time when I meet with people in person, particularly when they see our track record and reviews, they do decide to hire me and put me to work. So what I'll do is I'll bring with me the analysis again, so we can review it together as a team and figure out strategically how to position it, the property that is, to make sure we're maximizing value and getting you top dollar. And I will also have with me the appropriate documentation. So provided that if, and I'm aware that that is an if, you do feel comfortable and confident, then we can get the process started. Does that sound fair? They're like, okay, right? So, just kind of managing that expectation that is my intention when we connect. And then when we do a live listing presentation, we can kind of walk people through how that is. So I want everybody to hear, hopefully this has been helpful or useful to you in some way. And what I want everybody to hear is that there's about 5 conversations that you have to master if you want to be a dominant listing agent. You want to list 100 plus properties a year, the way me and Jose do, individually, one at a time. It begins with setting appointments. It continues with the pre-qualification, right? And this is how you prepare for the listing presentation. There's a saying that says, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. Well, if you don't prepare properly and you don't ask these surgical questions, you're walking in essentially blind. And that is why, according to the National Association of Realtors, when an agent goes into a listing appointment, on 100 appointments, they'll only take 20 of those listings. When me and Jose go on listing appointments, we'll take 80 to 85 of those. So it's a difference of $5, $6, $7, $800,000 a year in income. And one of the main reasons is because of this particular skill. So hopefully this has been helpful or useful to you in some way. If you have liked this episode, be sure to smash the subscribe button. Be sure to like the episode and then go ahead and share it. If you think there's other agents out there who could, benefit from our time together today, go ahead and do that. So be sure to look out for the next installment of these 5 kind of master level conversations about listing property in high volume. And what we'll be talking about on that one is, what information is being sent out before we go and see them and that whole process, right? Because there is a SOP for that, a standard operating procedure. And we're more than happy to share that with you in hopes that it can help you in some way. So you ready? Here's the crazy part. How much capital does this require? How much capital does this require? How much capital does this require?